Now, the Expo 2020 hosted by Dubai, United Arab Emirates, is in its second month already. We are now joined by producer Ndishishii Hamufugu, who will discuss some of the issues from the Expo's first month's highlights, as well as what we may expect in the second month. Good morning, colleague, and thank you very much for joining us.
A very good morning to you, Alak. Very good morning to our wonderful people, and of course, maybe an audience. Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to see you, Ndishishii. Now, I know when you spoke to our colleague Trizia almost 2 weeks ago, you mentioned that you were still adjusting and settling in. Have you settled now?
Yes, I have fully settled now in the lovely UAE or Dubai, if you will. Things are really going well. I have acclimatized, so to say. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Now, the Expo 2020 Dubai is now in its second month. Please give us a preview of what the first month, looked like.
Elago, the month of October was such a busy and robust month. So many things took place during that month alone. Remember, it was the opening month for the Expo. It started on the 1st of October for Namibia itself. That's the time when we, of course, opened our pavilion on the 7th of October, officially opened our pavilion. And since then, it's been back-to-back engagements, it's been forums, it's been conferences, it's been meetings around, how countries can work together. Remember, the Global Business Forum Africa also took place during the month of October, which, of course, looked at better cooperation amongst African states in the wake of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. I know that our Commissioner General, Ms. Nangula Wanja, was engaged in meetings with potential investors. Back-to-back meetings have been taking place prior to leaving for her duties, of course, at the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board back in Namibia. But it has really been a busy month. So much has been taking place here at Expo 2020 Dubai. Just speaking to our director for the Namibian Pavilion here, Madam Tungamboti, reflecting on that month, Namibia had so many visits, approximately more than 30,000 people had visited the Namibian Pavilion during that time. And in terms of leads, in terms of interests, about 50 potential investors have expressed a willingness to come and invest, in Namibia. Just looking at the visuals there on your screens as well, so many people have come into the pavilion and have literally gone through each and every one of those panels, just reading about who and what Namibia is and what she has to offer, etc. It's really been a busy month here at Expo 2020, and I must say it has been fruitful, especially for Namibia. Remember, Namibia came here with a number of key objectives, and one of that is, of course, to secure investment. And just speaking to some of the leaders here of the Namibian delegation, they have expressed satisfaction with how things are unraveling so far, and I think things can only get better from this point forward.
That's beautiful to hear, Ndishishii. Now, please recap for us what Namibia's display was like in the first month, and if it will change in the second month, and what that change will be.
Well, in essence, the pavilion does not change, the offerings does not change, but you do go along with thematic weeks, which the organizers of the Expo 2020 Dubai have outlined. There are about 10 thematic weeks throughout the 6-month duration of Expo. And the first two during October was, of course, climate and biodiversity, as well as space, which Namibia also partook in, displaying, of course, what Namibia's efforts are in terms of climate and biodiversity conservation. Furthermore, also displaying Namibia's progression with regards to space. A little nation, but we are also exploring in that respect. So we've really been involved, going with the thematic weeks, displaying what Namibia has to offer in regards to those thematic weeks. And I think, it has really been a good show of display for Namibia in terms of just keeping up. And I must say, Elago, the people who come into the pavilion are always so impressed about what Namibia has to offer and the manner in which Namibia tells its story. So many pavilions here at Expo are centered around technology, and I must say, very impressive technology. But Namibia provides people with, a background story, a story of where they're headed in terms of, a nation. And I think that's the uniqueness that Namibia offers. And people are just so blown away by the contrast that is Namibia, And a simple example is the zebra skin that's within the Namibian pavilion. And you'd be amazed at something that may perhaps seem so simple to us, as people from Southern Africa, but a lot of times people come in and be like, "Is this a real zebra skin? Is this a real zebra?" That's the kind of reactions you get from the Namibian pavilion, and it's just been amazing to see, the impression that Namibia leaves on these people, young, old. It doesn't matter. Everybody who enters that pavilion just leaves so amazed and talk about wanting to visit Namibia in future.
Now, Ndishishii, having described how people are so mesmerized about the Namibian pavilion, I'm going to ask you a question, but you need to answer this very carefully, Ndishishii. Which pavilion do you think is the best there on display?
Elago, I must admit there's so many impressive pavilions here, and I think it's just a matter of resources, of course. When you look at pavilions like the UK, like Russia, like the US, like Egypt, for instance, I mean, Egypt even has mummies within their pavilion. It's really hard to pick. I think every nation speaks for itself, and without sounding too patriotic, Namibia just stands out for me. I'm sorry to say this, but that is unfortunately what it is. But I must say there are a lot of very impressive pavilions here. People have really gone out and just, done some really amazing things. You must note, of course, that pavilions such as Namibia's have been sort of donated by the UAE government. So on that part, you could see some of us are trying to save money and whatnot. But whereas those who, of course, have the resources for it, they just went full out. I mean, the Russian pavilion has this neuroscopic display, where they literally build the human brain, and it's just so mind-blowing. But at this point, I can't pick one single pavilion. Everything has just been so impressive here.
With your description, I really wish I was there to see some of these pavilions as well. Now,
you would have.
This week's theme for Namibia is urban and development. What can you tell us about this theme?
Well, that's actually part of the overall thematic weeks of Expo 2020. So this is the third theme. Remember, there are two in October, climate and biodiversity, as well as space. Now we're entering for the month of October, which is, of course, urban and rural development, as well as inclusivity and tolerance, if I'm not mistaken. So this week focuses on how do we, of course, create safer cities. How do we create greener cities? How do we develop our cities in a sustainable manner from this point forward? And I attended a plenary session yesterday on the city of Lahore, as you see there on your screens. And this really speaks to rural development and how they have used heritage, be it cultural, be it craft, be it food, as a tool to spur development within the city of Lahore. Today, the city of Lahore is one of the front runners of rural development on the back of heritage. They are even the 26th largest city in the world, and all of this started from the 1950s. So just so interesting to see the various opportunities, the various routes that nations can explore in terms of developing both urban in a sustainable way, but also the rural parts. Another example was what they termed, or for lack of a better term, rotational capital status. So instead of, take for instance, Windhoek as our capital city, you would move to Rundu or Walvis Bay or whatever the case may be. In that sense, government functions, government operations move to that particular part of the country for a certain period with that business activity as well. And that is how some of these nations have, developed rural areas. But I'm most impressive with how they've used, heritage as a tool to develop some of the rural parts in that particular part of Pakistan, Lahore, without so much as taking away from the people their cultural heritage, their origins, their roots. It's really been impressive. And that's the nature of discussions for this week, Urban and Rural Development Week. There are officials from the city of Windhoek here in Dubai as well to come and learn. And I'm hoping to tag along with them today and just catch up with what they're learning and who they're engaging. They are mainly from the waste management division as well as the electricity department. So it's really just a week looking at how can we transform our urban cities? How can we make mobility more easier? Move away from the traditional transport.
That is actually very, very interesting because it also ties in well with the climate discourse currently happening all over the world. Well, it was great to talk to you, Ndishishii. We've unfortunately run out of time. It is good seeing you. And we will touch base with you again later on the show, probably this week or next week.
Thank you so much, Ilago. Thank you so much for having me. I miss you guys. Keep well over there. And yeah, talk soon, yeah.
Thank you. Keep well too. Well, that was NBC producer Ndishishii Hamufugu speaking to us about the Expo 2020 currently underway in Dubai, and he was just giving us a rundown of what the first month was like and what we can expect in the second month.